everyone, and welcome to today's session on incentives, loyalty programs, and cryptocurrencies. In this session, we'll be joined by a distinguished panel of guests who will talk about incentives and loyalty programs that have worked to increase the engagement and adoption of products and protocols in the digital currency space. We'll discuss how cryptocurrencies have designed particular incentives into the structure of these protocols. And we'll also hear from these experts from across the ecosystem that have used these loyalty programs as they're from protocols, exchanges, as well as fintech product providers. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Marina. Okay.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Blockchain by Women.
Thank you. And at Blockchain by Women, our goal is to increase education in the space as well as diversity. So I'm Karen. I'm one of the other co-founders of Blockchain by Women, and I'm also CMO of AppDome, and we provide security and fraud prevention for mobile wallets and apps. So without further ado, let's go around and please, panelists, introduce yourselves. Jania, do you want to start?
Thank you, Karen and Marina. My name is Jania. I work for Binance. Recently joined around, Binance US, which is very important. The US branch of the company. I recently joined to lead their growth and product marketing efforts. So that definitely kind of hits close to the base of what I'm focusing on right now, which is increasing retention and loyalty of our customer base.
And Rachel?
Awesome. Hi, guys. I'm Rachel. I'm the head of design at Fold. So if you guys don't know Fold, we're a Bitcoin rewards app. We have a debit card and an app where users can earn Bitcoin rewards for shopping and spending. And we tie gamification and loyalty and like kind of game design theory into everything that we do. We try to make everything really fun and really accessible for people.
And Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan Taylor. I'm the CEO of Dashcore Group. Dashcore Group is the main development organization behind the Dash cryptocurrency. We get a lot of our funding from virtually all of our funding from the blockchain itself. And we also invest and partner with payment-related companies, have a portfolio of companies that we're invested in, et cetera.
Great. Thank you all for sharing your backgrounds. Let's first take a step back and talk about how loyalty is unique in crypto versus other markets. Jania, since you have come from big tech recently and are now in the crypto space, can you provide a perspective of what's similar, what's different? For example, the importance of brand and loyalty, ease of use.
Yes, absolutely. I think from being a marketer coming from big tech, I worked for Google for 10 years, dipping toes in crypto space. Just want to outline, I'm more coming from a normie background versus crypto native. There's a lot of us, I think, entering the space, and I'm super excited to learn more about the particular areas of the market and products, but at the same time, also excited to bring in some expertise from the past. And one thing that we've been noticing both in user research and surveys that we've been running, as well as at the data that we're looking at, is that the loyalty across the board for exchanges is very low. The main two things that people are caring about, I would say it's not going to be a surprise for anyone. It's assets listed. What is the access that exchange provides? And then also, what are the tools that allow them to create more profit, right, for themselves as traders? We were very surprised to find out that security of the platform is a concern, but it's basically not as pronounced as we thought. I'm not saying that, you know, people completely don't care about that, but apparently like the coin listings and the amount of products that they have access to is like by far their decision maker. Then we also were able to look at some aggregated data on the other side I don't know, just like some data that we're able to tap into that shows that crypto exchanges have users who have the most amount of accounts across multiple exchanges. And they actually visit different sites pretty regularly. Basically, we're assuming that a lot of them have 3 to 4 accounts. And they have assets in both exchanges, in all of the exchanges, right? So this poses a big concern for us because we are seeing a lot of fluctuations of the market, but also like fluctuations of the loyalty of our customers. And it does put us in a slightly difficult position because let's say if a users are only concerned and their loyalty is driven mostly by payouts or promotions, etc. We're in a tough space of competing. There's a lot of this promos going on in the industry, and coming from a more classic marketing background, I have a lot of questions to actually return on investment on many of them. And then at the same time, with a lot of regulatory scrutiny, right, it's very hard to innovate as much as in big tech. In big tech, there's a lot less scrutiny in developing new tech products versus in crypto exchanges. So from my perspective, I actually am super excited to take part in this panel because I'm probably going to learn something for my job as well from the other experts. And I'm actually very curious about models around loyalty for crypto exchanges that's similar to credit cards. What I think there is a potential to tap into partnership across the board with the companies that provide services where there is a reward program that allows you to redeem points across multiple different platforms. I also curious to hear if you guys have seen examples of that. There's a lot of conversations about how blockchain is going to completely revolutionize loyalty program as a whole, having user data publicly available, of course, by consent, and creating these conglomerates of different companies where tokenized rewards can be redeemed across multiple businesses. So I would think like in terms of innovation in crypto, I'm really looking forward to see more work emerging on that front, bringing more loyalty.
And so that's great. And so if we could go to Ryan, actually, I think you have a lot of perspective having worked on these kinds of programs before. Before you delve into those, could you give a little background on the use cases? Because I think that's going to provide good context for the loyalty programs. And so in terms of use cases, what are the major ones that you're seeing? And how have the loyalty programs worked or the incentives worked differently for each of those use cases?
Yeah, well, as an advocate for the Dash network, we're out there working with various businesses that are integrating Dash in some form into their platforms. Dash is a payment-oriented cryptocurrency. What makes it unique is that it confirms instantly in about 1.4 seconds on average for a transaction to be fully settled and spendable by the recipient. And transaction fees are extremely low, about 1/10 of a cent per transaction. And so we've really optimized our blockchain for the payments use case. And so a lot of the use cases that we interact with are payments oriented. Dash is one of the most used cryptocurrencies throughout Latin America. And we have some recent data on that. But we also have been making a big push within the US here this year with the launch of a instant savings program called Dash Direct. This is an app that sits on the user's phone alongside their wallet and allows them to spend their Dash at retailers throughout the US. There's about 250 brands in there, representing about 160,000 physical stores in the US. And these are major brands like The Gap or PetSmart or Applebee's, places like that that are name brand brands. And when we integrate with a platform, they then in many cases, pass along a discount to the user for paying in Dash. And what we found is that Dash users are about 40 to 45 times more engaged with that version of the app, the Dash version of the app, than the same app that does the same exact thing using credit cards. And so we found that there's a lot of benefit to the merchant to being in the app. We found that our users are incredibly loyal to those brands that do attach themselves to the Dash Direct application. And so there's benefit for both sides. And then, talking about Latin America, it's a whole different set of circumstances that we're solving for in many of those countries that we're doing well in. Specifically, just having payment network that works alongside failing infrastructure and other issues that are plaguing other payment methods. Just being able to facilitate a transaction in real time without significant failure rate is a value add for those consumers, and you don't really need to pass along a discount. They're willing to pay through that method simply because it's working for them. So these markets are very different in terms of what motivates the customer, and a Dash user is going to be very different than an exchange user in terms of what motivates them. I have to agree that a lot of these exchanges are spending a lot of money on bonuses and sign up things and all kinds of stuff. And I question the data as well. It's something that oftentimes when we're pursuing a listing, that the exchanges are anxious to do one, and hey, can we do a promo? Can we do this type of thing? And I think the data shows that people will trade it temporarily to get the promo, and then they're not necessarily sticking around and being loyal for the long term. And so I think by use case and by market and by user type or user profile that you're going after, different things appeal to them and different things drive the loyalty.
Right. So like acquisition as a use case, like acquiring crypto, which probably people going to exchanges are focused on, versus people using crypto as a form of payment, which is where probably, Ryan, you've been spending a lot of time with people on, are very different. And then, like you mentioned, it appears there are differences across regions of the world. So certainly in the US and Europe, you might have a certain type of use case more dominant than in other parts of the world. And so
and what motivates people can vary a lot. In the US, you're competing with credit cards that offer mileage and cash back and all kinds of things. In order to motivate someone to become a Dash user in the US, you have to offer them something that is comparable to that. In the Dash Direct app, our users are saving on average between 4 and 5%. And that is very appealing and kind of makes up for the volatility risk and so on that people are concerned with. To be able to use it over a longer period of time, you're going to save money more than you would by using a credit card. In a market like Brazil, they're already used to 20, 30 different payment methods. They don't automatically pull out their payment card. They may pull out a meal voucher from their employer. They may peel out a debit card or a credit card, or they may pay cash a lot of places. They may pay through one of these alternate networks that operate down there. And so they have to think about it. Every transaction, they have to consider where they are, how they want to pay, what the benefits and costs are of various payment methods. And it's a conscious decision for them, unlike here in the US. And so it makes it easier to enter a market like that, where people are willing to think about and have to think about what they're going to do in order to facilitate a transaction. So these aren't just region specific, they're country specific.
yeah, and we saw that in our data as well. We did a recent mobile consumer survey and found that Latin America had the highest increase in also use of mobile wallets. as compared to, say, banking apps that are more widely used, and obviously the security issues that go along with that in other countries. Now, Rachel, with the different use cases that we just talked about and the geographies and sort of what people are looking for, what have you found has worked at FoldApp to increase engagement and adoption? And how has that differed by use case, or has it differed by use case in your opinion?
Sure. So Fold's kind of had a little bit of an interesting journey. So the kind of state where we're at now, we also started sort of as a almost like a gift card marketplace operating similarly, where we would get discounts from different merchants and stuff, and we would pass those on as basically discounts for users to spend their Bitcoin in real life situations. We are Bitcoin only, by the way, just mentioning that. So some of it's a little. And we're also U.S. only. Um, and now we've kind of moved less towards kind of like trying to prove the kind of like spending use case, and more towards just encouraging widestream mainstream adoption of Bitcoin. And we found that again, while there are different drives for and different motivators for different people, there are kind of these like core motivators. There's this actually really good book by his name is Yukai Cho called Actionable Gamification, which has proved to be really useful in kind of identifying like those kind of similar shared drives within people. Honestly, like the main thing we found is in order to prove the value of Bitcoin to users, we have to give it to them, and so we've kind of moved towards giving people rewards and kind of like triggering these little emotional like rewards receptors in their brains, and then kind of using that to bring them into building better habits and learning more about the whole world of Bitcoin. So, I think we've identified like, we've sort of started with the more kind of like maximalist or crypto Bitcoin native community to learn about what they wanted and what like is a valuable product for people that are in the Bitcoin and crypto space. And now that we're trying to expand to like broader regions and more, like new coiner, like just curious communities, we've found that the real kind of like exciting drivers are more playful and more accessible. I think there's kind of been a bit of an accessibility issue in crypto and Bitcoin adoption in general. Um, it's like kind of like a branding issue, right? So trying to make it as accessible and fun for users as we can be has proved to be really awesome and really exciting. And I think also another part of that, with kind of like on the back of this gamification and loyalty aspect, is we've kind of amassed a bit of like a really tight knit and excitable and passionate community. And I think if I were to say like, you know, what builds and what is like responsible for like the growth of Bitcoin in general, but also for Fold's growth, is I think kind of like both ends of like encouraging a kind of like a feedback loop there and building and making people feel a part of a community.
Yeah, so if we could build on that a bit more, that notion of community and how important it is in growing adoption, versus some of the other things that we talked before, where you're not offering incentives to people to buy or to use. So yeah, just if you could offer your perspectives on community in terms of the programs that have worked over the years, what also hasn't worked, and what might look more promising.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said, community and our product is our whole growth model, right? We barely make do any marketing spend. Almost all of our growth is just through word of mouth and through our community itself. Um, our community being Twitter. We have a Discord channel. We have we sponsor meetups and we try to like be out there in the broader Bitcoin and crypto community as well. Um, and we found, honestly, it wasn't even part of our game plan to begin with. These communities formed organically because of the gamification that we, and the kind of just like the brand vibe, I think a little bit that we developed. We try to be approachable and a little bit irreverent, but also knowledgeable and generous in terms of like sharing information and you know being approachable in that way. And I think, so it's a little bit of, I don't know, like what came first, right? I think the community came first, honestly. We're engaging a lot with Twitter, just trying to get our name out there. And then once we started building out these experiments, which honestly, the whole, spin wheel, which is the core, kind of the core mechanic of the whole Fold app, which is a variable reward system, basically. So you get from 1 to 100% back on every purchase based on what you spin on a wheel. It was an experiment to begin with, and we, as the designer, at the head of design, the community has been my greatest tool to learn what works and what doesn't work. We do surveys, we do user testing, but honestly, just like the one-on-one like conversations with people has been incredibly valuable. And I think it's been, I'm trying to think of like what's like a principle that we've learned, that we've like come out of like the building the community. I think it's really just being there, being open, sharing often, like sharing, not being afraid to share unfinished work, and kind of be open to ask questions and learn from people and to make mistakes has been really super valuable. And we have, in our Discord, it's filled with people kind of sharing their big wins from the spin wheels, from sharing strategies about how to, each every few weeks we have different wheels with different kind of like themes around how you can strategize around them. Some of them reward bigger purchases, some of them reward saving up extra spins to get more. So we kind of have a community around sharing strategies. And then of course, like getting more tactically, we try to reward like referrals and getting more people shared into the community. And we're working right now on building in some of that community feel that we have on external apps, like with Discord and Twitter, into the actual experience itself. So that would come with kind of rewarding more of this referral kind of system. So we're testing out the idea of what we're calling a spin squad. So you can earn kind of more as you invite more people into communicating with you or playing with you. And we also we still want to continue to make sure that we're bringing it back to our like main mission, which is like bringing financial freedom to everyone through what we believe the method is, through Bitcoin, right? So what's so great about the Bitcoin community and the crypto community at large is that everyone's kind of got similar, they have a similar mission, right? They all want to see programs that encourage Bitcoin mainstream adoption to succeed, right? So our success is their success as well. So they've been super like engaging and helpful. Some of the best like user study participants I've ever had have been Bitcoiners. So it's been awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So we have some questions from the audience. The first one, in dovetailing on or building out what you just talked about, Rachel, in terms of community. Ryan, I know we've talked a lot about community in the past. So if you could touch on Dash's experience there. And then also we have a question from the audience on if you could touch on how Evo, the platform, is going to change the game of ease of usability.
Okay, yeah. So Dash is one of the older projects in crypto. It launched back in 2014. And over that time, we've gone through, I would say, different phases of community growth based on the products and services and things that we had available on our network. And so it's really evolved. I think, Dash had an early reputation for being a quote, privacy coin, because it was the first to implement a CoinJoin enabled wallet. And of course, most networks have CoinJoin now today, but it really attracted a set of people that were attracted to that value proposition. And the next year we introduced instant transactions and really shifted a lot more towards a payments oriented use case and optimization around the payments use case. The person asking the question, pointed towards the next thing that's coming, which is our evolution or platform that's being released. It's on testnet right now, and it's going live early next year on mainnet. And it basically is a sidechain for Dash that is devoted to data. And that allows us to start to build applications on top of Dash. One of the first that we're going to be introducing is a social payment app called Dash Pay. It'll be like Venmo. You'll have a username. You'll be able to create a friends list and send friend requests to people and simply pay to a username instead of trying to get somebody's cryptographic address from them. All of this is going to be possible within the network itself. We will also be able to build apps that are payment related. That means we could build an invoicing app and have it reside in the network. Loyalty and rewards and offers can reside directly in the Dash network in they're called data contracts, but they're essentially apps that sit on the network itself. And so we have a wave of innovation that's going to be coming. And as we're kind of headed towards that right now, with the launch of Dash Direct this year, we're seeing a lot of user adoption from that product. In Venezuela, we've been deeply integrated into the point of sale system of a lot of major retailers, including some of the largest grocery store chains, the largest like general retailer called Traki. There's a number of them at this point. And in each one of these markets, we're finding that when you drive that ease of use and combine it with some type of offer, that's what is leading to the growth on these platforms. And I think that with the introduction of this new technology next year, we're going to be able to start to develop a set of applications that function very similarly to some of the centralized services that we're talking about right now, but residing within the network itself, similar to a smart contract in nature. And so these are some of the things that we've been working on and thinking about for a long time, and being able to do it now. It's live on testnet right now. I think we have 1.5 more releases, each about lasting 6 weeks to go before our MVP version. And we hope to go live sometime early next year. So I think we're about to start to experiment with a lot of app-based natively Dash apps that are doing a lot of these types of loyalty, rewards, and offers programs that are traditionally offered by companies.
And Jania, I know we had talked a bit about ease of use and its relationship to loyalty and incentives. But I also just wanted to see if you had anything else you wanted to add or comment or had a question about.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of great points that were raised by Ryan, especially on how everything differs by region, segment, and use case. I really like this formula. I want to say that even though I'm focusing on US market and Binance US, I can say that the loyalty situation for Binance.com in what people call emerging markets is completely different. There is incredibly deep loyalty that people in those countries that actually never had access to financial tools developed by bigger companies that serve like mostly developed countries. They were the first one to launch, and what we're observing, like, you don't even need to go far. You go on social media, there are people branding their cars, their own cars, with Binance.com logos. There are people creating, like, like morning cakes with the logos. They're constantly submitting a lot of UGC content. People are fully grateful. So I think brand in the rest of the world also plays a much higher role when it comes to emerging markets. And I think the core of it, as I said, is because they were able to have access to tools that we've been having access in a traditional finance. For the first time, with those crypto companies entering the market. So I think that's a really good point. And we definitely should not address it in the same way in different regions, and there are different drivers. In terms of community, I think it actually partially answers one of the questions in the panel. In terms of community, basically Binance.com was launched 4 years ago, right? Coinbase already existed in US, but they kind of started from US market. The first 2 years, I think 90% of Binance.com marketing was focused only on community. And these are all the things that Rachel mentioned. They involved local marketing leaders. They hired literally people in all those different countries. There's like maybe like 80 marketing managers across the world to actually work with those core communities. And that's where all of the marketing spend was. They've created a program that is called Angel Program, where you're not necessarily employed with Binance, but you are actually managing community work and almost like a third-party representative, a brand ambassador in the country. And people were really driven by the access to information. Binance.com really invested in a big educational platform. It's called Binance Academy, where they're writing articles, trying to educate people, and they were really trying to work through making this information more accessible, and educate local people on how to use the tools, how to access to the best tools. And then also opportunity for employment. A lot of angels eventually became internal full-timers. And again, in those emerging markets, that's an incredible career opportunity for those people in such a booming industry. And some of them also found opportunity to be hired as traders in a more classic firms later on after having that expensive experience. And so through word of mouth, in 2 years, globally, they were able to become #1 exchange globally, right? In terms of users and trading volume. This is changing now with the increase of competition. I think it's still #1, but by far, I think community played the biggest role in emerging markets for Binance.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen, or at least I've seen, a lot of ambassadors for the different protocols do really well and just have just a lot of passion for who they're talking to and just speaking the message of that particular protocol in the use case or company. So we have a few questions here, a couple questions for Rachel. So I wanted to get back to that because some of them are pretty interesting. So the first one is, do you feel the gamification techniques and as an aside, please, anyone, if you have any questions, please enter them in chat. We will definitely work our way through them. So for Rachel, do you feel the gamification techniques you're using may be causing addictive behaviors that amplify the volatility of Bitcoin? And do you think the way these behavior patterns intersect with the broader Bitcoin community leads to a desire for a more stable foundation for digital currency? So yeah, if you could talk a bit more about the gamification and how that may lead to addictive behaviors, and then onto the goal for a more stable foundational digital currency after that.
Sure, of course. We always want to make sure that we are putting our users and just people in general first. So, you know, right now we're in this age where everyone, I feel like, knows when they're being sold to or knows when they're being played a little bit. I think people can identify when they're being gamified at. And we definitely don't want to encourage any kind of like, you know, addictive or black hat kind of techniques or behaviors. Our goal here, when I said like, is to you know, build, you know, financial freedom for users. We really mean it, and we care about it, and that's we care about our users. And when I say that our community is our growth engine, you know, I think we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't try to equip them to be, you know, to encourage good behaviors in them. And that's kind of been our ethos. And we're working all again on building out some of our kind of like pathways in for new users, especially. We really do want to be not only a source for people to, you know, build stacks and get you know, a good position in their Bitcoin empire, but we you know, we want to build good financial behaviors with users, and that's kind of been our ethos from the start, right? So we're a little bit of kind of a Trojan horse in that way, right? So we operate almost like a financial banking platform that users know and understand. You know, we have a debit card where you spend fiat, but you're earning Bitcoin. So like by operating and using these behaviors that users already know how to do, we're kind of able now to sort of slide into these existing behaviors and introduce new and like financially healthy behaviors. So while giving them Bitcoin, we're like, great, now you have this Bitcoin. Let's teach you a little bit about it. And we're trying to build out our education programs as well. But we really want to make sure that we're not encouraging gambling or any kind of like addictive behaviors in that way. Again, this isn't like, it's not, you know, like gambling, it's just rewards. It's playing around with what kinds of rewards you can get. And for some people that don't like this, that either, you know, feel they're being played with or that you know, want to know for sure, you know, on a spreadsheet what they're getting, that might not be the system for them. And we're also working with users that aren't necessarily into that, and we're trying to implement and experiment with new ways that we can reach everyone. But yeah, we want to make sure that we're not encouraging any bad behaviors, and we're always trying to learn. And sometimes we don't get everything right, but we're, you know, it's definitely something we're making sure at every point we're not, you know, on the dark side.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I don't think that very many people are under the impression that Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies are stable. And if, you know, I hear the concern. At the same time, the community almost is already a risk-seeking type of community. People that are already into crypto are very risk-seeking or non-risk averse people to begin with. So it almost marries a little bit with the reward itself. If a reward or if a user is not a reward seeker on their own accord, this wouldn't be an attractive offer to begin with. And so I think that, you know, these are rewards at the end of the day. They're not asking people to put money in to a system like this. Right. With Dash, our users are taking a financial risk when they put some money in their wallets, and but there is a reward there for them, which is, hey, there's savings here. And I think at the end of the day, if you focus only on the negative, you're ignoring the benefits. The benefits are Fold users are getting, you know, free Bitcoin essentially, and Dash users are getting some instant savings. And over a period of time, they're going to be better off doing that than not getting a reward or not getting savings. And so I think that there's some aspect of this where the risk-seeking behavior and the product itself do marry together, and they belong together in many respects. And in the other, it's it's a little unfair to point out the negatives without pointing out the fact that there are positives here too.
Yeah, and I do think yes, there a, a number of people are not risk averse in the crypto space, but there are also an increasing number of people who are new to the space that may have been more risk averse before, but because crypto has become more widely adopted, they definitely see it as an opportunity and are willing to take that risk. And that's what makes it so incredibly exciting, I think, for all of us who have watched this space grow. And so I wanted to transition to a couple of other questions. This one more for Jania. So there was a question about, and thank you, Sunita, for this question. She said she's learning that the approach to be in this together with users, listen, share unfinished work, make mistakes, is a good approach. To what extent does this also apply to more functional products like exchanges? And so wanted to know if you had thoughts on that in terms of, you know, how you're taking feedback from the community going forward. And also, you know, yeah, I know you can't share everything, but just, you know, your philosophy going forward, given your experience at Google and other places, you know, what do you think a best practice? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I partially answered this question with example of Binance.com early growth that really attributed to huge investment to global communities across the world. However, in terms of like my own personal views on where it's going, I do think that for quite a long time, I think most of people will still be mostly driven by monetary value, right? That they're getting out of the exchanges. However, I do think there is definitely a opportunity for more what we call like brand game, right? To develop higher loyalty with the user base. I do think that it's interesting to tap into what the loyalty program for exchange could look like, right? You know, we all have example of, let's say, Chase Sapphire that was able to come in at some point. It's slightly different industry, right, or use case, but there was a bunch of credit cards out there, and Chase came in and was able to develop a credit card reward system program that gained a tremendous amount of traction within 1 year. And I remember myself how I've been seeing more and more this like blue card everywhere. So I do think there is a way to actually think about what's the loyalty program look like for exchange. I think it's definitely not only me who's thinking about this. Currently, I think a month ago, there was news that Coinbase is building subscription service for their traders, both retail and institutional, and quite an interesting development as well. I think it means that everyone is innovating. How would I think would the community be a big driver in the future? I think it depends on the segment. I think if I'm talking only about US market, I do think that maybe we do want to build some sort of presence within a community of people that are very savvy on crypto and blockchain technology side, NFTs, etc. And there, I do think there is an opportunity to develop loyalty through being a part of conversation, right? I absolutely see that. But that reminds me of like more classic you know, like development of different companies. Like, let's say if there is a B2B sector, those kind of things really can move the needle in markets like US. While for B2C, I don't know. I'm personally at this level of kind of like maturity of an exchange market. I don't really see community being one of the main drivers. However, I do think that, you know, getting user feedback and brainstorming on product features, it's like it's just the bread and butter of like tech innovation, right? Consumer voice should be heard. And those loyalty programs and high power users are a great source of the insights.
So let's switch to the institutional side of things, since we've spent a good part of the discussion on retail, users. Are there, or have you seen particular programs, loyalty programs work for the institutional side, and to even call them loyalty programs? I mean, probably don't call them loyalty programs. What are the incentives then for the institutional side, and how do you see that evolving?
Yeah. This is fairly easy. I think institutional clients, based on how much they actually operate in terms of funds, care a lot about trading fees. Trading fees has been an incredible driver for us to retain our institutional base. However, long term, I do think that trading fees will eventually go down because what we're seeing right now has been already happening in like more classic fintech world back in the days when the fees were very high, and then eventually competition brought them down. And from what I would guess would be the driver is kind of customer experience of your top clients. Let's say, can they have a more white glove type of approach where they can have customer support on the call 24/7, right? Or being able to tap into any sort of consultancy help from our key like account managers. So I think that's a big big factor for someone who's institutional or corporate client. And then, of course, I also think with the current news that kind of shaked up crypto exchange world, security and security measures that the platform is taking to make sure that they can retrieve their money, they have access to their money are safe and sound, would be probably another big factor. And maybe another thing that was worth mentioning is just in general, if there are any sort of opportunities to make easier ways to transfer funds and assets between different platforms. That's also something that they care about from what I've been hearing and seeing. So kind of like the smoothness of experience when they actually want to use more than one platform, right? Or to transfer funds or take them out is also a big factor.
Yes, it's so great that you touched on the security issues with the exchanges recently, because that's been in the news. Just in the last 3 weeks, there has been over, looks like 250 million, sorry, that has been lost through exchanges or crypto companies. So there was Celsius network, but also Bitmart and BXH exchanges. So centralized and decentralized exchanges were hacked into, and the issues stem from basic security issues like people getting access to private keys and just getting in between the company and or badger down the case of Celsius network and the end users' wallets. So given that I know with Fold and with Dash, you guys have different things that you're doing to address those issues. First of all, if you could just talk about that perspective of, hey, is it the app maker's responsibility or not? I mean, are these newer users coming on, these newer people coming to adopt crypto, are they expecting more that the app makers would take care of them? Or is it more, hey, I'm going to take care of my own stuff, just like I've always have, and the community started that way. The Bitcoin users, early Bitcoin users, all took care of their own business, right? And that feeling was very strong, as well as with the Dash community. So has that mentality changed at all? And then, what are the sort of things that you're seeing expected from a, just a protection, a wallet protection and security perspective?
Well, this is something that we constantly struggle with because greater protection usually has to come at the expense of something else. So ease of onboarding versus having a higher level of security for a self-custodial wallet, those two things are usually pulling on each other in some capacity. And so for us, we try to introduce messages when the user is setting up their wallet that explains the importance of it, but allows them to skip some of those steps for later. And then we'll remind them that, hey, you need to write down your seed phrase or what have you, in order to try to give the user education, but at the same time, some choice in the matter of, at that moment in time, are they more interested in ease of onboarding and moving quickly, or do they want to fully secure their wallet now, do it later? And so it's something we struggle with because it's a responsibility too, as an app developer, to make sure that your users understand the risks that they're taking if they don't properly back up their seed phrase somewhere. An example of this is a lot of people would take a photo of their seed phrase on their phone. Well, that now you've got a photo somewhere that can be hacked and stolen. And so we made the decision that if the user engages to take a screenshot, that it will refresh the seed phrase when they're setting it up and say, no, you can't take a photo. You have to write it down. You can do it later if you want to, but you have to write this down. And so for us, it's a design issue and a product issue where we need to try to balance those things. And this is something a lot of non-custodial wallet providers struggle with, whether you're talking to Edge Wallet or you're talking to BitFi in Brazil. They all struggle with this issue and how to get it set up in a way where the user takes the responsibility they need to. It is always far easier to have a custodial solution where the service provider is holding onto the funds for the user. Obviously exchanges deal with a unique set of circumstances where they're dealing with extremely large volumes of assets, but it usually is easier to provide it to the user that way. It's easier for the user to recover lost funds that way, but it is custodial in nature. And so I think there's tension between these things: decentralization, ease of use, and the level of security. And there's no right answer. It's trade-offs, and you have to deal with those within this industry.
Rachel, did you have a perspective on this, or?
Yeah, I mean, I basically completely agree. There's a lot of trade-offs. With Fold, we're not a wallet, so we always encourage our users to, learn about other, like, self-custody. We try to push users to withdraw, but also, again, there is a trade-off, and there's, we're going to be developing a credit card and a savings account where users will be able to potentially, like, what's the word, like, secure their credit with Bitcoin potentially. So again, there's ease of use and like increased kind of like functionality and things that you can do when you work with a system. But again, we're trying to build good habits as well. So we do definitely encourage self-custody and for users to engage in good behaviors. But
Yeah,
as we kind of, as an industry, expand out into more and more mainstream, the ease of use issue is becoming more pronounced, I would say. And what that does, and I'm hearing it from Rachel, is it shifts a lot of the burden towards education. Like we spend a lot of time thinking about, as a user is onboarding with us, educating them on what they need to know. And it's an ongoing effort. As she's pointing out, even after they're a user, you have to continue to educate them and take them steps along the way so that they can make appropriate decisions. So I think the answer here is a combination of struggling with those tensions and trying to find the right balance. And as we move towards a more mainstream audience, moving towards greater ease of use, at the same time, it's going to be this continuous process, I think. I don't think until this is like just second nature for people, there's a huge educational component to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there was a last question here or from the audience on if anyone has run into concerns with offering crypto and running afoul of the California Consumer Privacy Act, which sets rules for offering financial incentives that often apply to rewards programs. And while this is maybe a California Privacy Act, I think in general, if there are other countries that probably have the same issue, like with with Europe and GDPR, in general, have you found or run into any issues that sets rules for offering financial incentives that apply to rewards programs?
Sure, I can try to answer this. We have our lawyer that handles a lot of this, but so we try to structure our rewards program. It's actually more of a sweepstakes. So technically, there is no but no purchase necessary, no financial buy-in necessary. If users, I shouldn't probably like shout this out to everyone, but if you want to send a postcard to our address, you can also get a randomized award for not for free, essentially for the cost of a postcard. And we again try to play by the rules everywhere. We get our wheels every month submitted to all of the different states and approved by everything. And I think there's going to continue to be kind of more complications as things move forward, and I think we're just we're just kind of seeing how it goes. I'm gonna see what we can do to make sure we're playing by the rules everywhere. And I think, yeah, I mean that's what I'll say about that right now.
Okay, cool. So very last question, and I know we're going a little bit over, so for those of you who have to leave, thank you for your time, but if you can stay on a little bit longer, there's a very interesting question here from the audience, and that is, what is the biggest blocker so far to making crypto more accessible to female women participants? In different research that we have done here at Aptome, but also just in my anecdotal discussions with a lot of women, have talked about over the years, concerns about security, concerns about volatility. So things that, you might say are more risk averse type attributes. And that has been a challenge for people. But wanted to just go to you, Rachel, and to you, Ryan, just given your experience in the space, have you found certain things or just have thoughts on this going forward?
Yeah, I'd
Sure.
be happy to. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go for it. You go for it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if we look back at our data from just a few years ago, crypto in general and Dash was no different. The data set that we got from our research partner was like 98% male. It was the most extreme ratio they had ever found for any product. And this was, I think, at the end of 2017 when we engaged in that work. And it's the crypto space at large. And we struggled with, well, hey, there's this big market out there that aren't using cryptocurrency, but the broad attitude was, it's not for me. It's too volatile. It's male dominated. It's whatever, and that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy in and of itself. And so, great big market, and yet huge barriers to being able to access it. And for us as a small project within the space, right? We can't take that burden on ourselves necessarily for the industry. So, for us, it's been a struggle of, well, how do we access new users that aren't crypto users, or is there a path to get there, or is it better to just go after existing crypto users and show the benefits that Dash can bring? And so that's been a struggle for us. It's started to change recently, where I think that that ratio is changing at a pretty dramatic pace, and I'm noticing it anecdotally and also in data that we see from like our own devices that we have active installs on our devices that we gather some information from. Apple users can block that type of information, but like some of them choose to share it, and so we do get some anecdotal and some data showing that is beginning to skew. It's still heavily male, but it's beginning to change, and it's becoming an accessible market. I think what's been really eye-opening for me is when we launched the Dash Direct app over the summer. All of a sudden, a lot of female friends and family members that showed no interest before, all of a sudden saw relevancy to their lives. I can't tell you how many times when I, have talked to these people over and over again about how great crypto is. As soon as I showed them they could save 6% at Ulta, they had a motivation to figure out how to use it. And women, direct a lot of the spending of the household too. And so they're interested in opportunities for savings. And I think that, you'll see the same thing from Rachel, that Fold's apps probably skew more female than the general Bitcoin population. And so I think it's through these relevant experiences and relevant value offerings that you start to enter a more mainstream audience. And when you're entering a more mainstream audience, that means moving from 98% male into a more inclusive environment. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now, where it is starting to develop into these relevant products that people are like, oh, yeah, I actually can see myself using that and benefiting from it.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that again, say I think completely it's a branding issue. I think it's because historically the crypto space has been built by and predominantly dominated by men, and it's just harder to reach people when you don't have that perspective necessarily to come into. I think a lot of it is if you bring more women in to your companies and to your spaces, they will help to build and communicate to other women. And I think it's just again, listening to people, to your users and to your non-users and to people that you want to target and hear what's interesting to them, learning from my friends, figuring out what it is that's important to them. I think like selling Bitcoin and crypto to to finance bros is one thing, is relatively easy, but selling it to my mom or my roommate from college is different, and it's just about finding what motivates them and what interests them and what are kind of the big sells. And I think the more, Ryan mentioned that like the Bitcoin community or the crypto community in general is starting to get much more diversified and kind of maybe more rapidly diversified. I think it's gonna hockey stick up as the culture becomes more nuanced and a little bit more just accessible to everyone.
Right. And yeah, and we've seen this in our research too. Women are more, care more a lot, care more about security especially in mobile apps. And so if they see that is working, then that's what they'll gravitate to. If they don't see that there, then they'll shy away from it. But yeah, like you guys are saying, I do see the education in the space improving across the board. So that's helping, and the ease of use, that's helping to make the crypto more accessible. So thank you all for taking an extra time, a few minutes with us here to answer a lot of these questions. There were a lot of great questions, so thank you to the audience for sharing. And we look forward to future discussions with you all. Thank you and have a wonderful evening or morning wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.